Holacracy team here at Zappos. I assume everyone would be heard of Holacracy? Good. All right, great. So on the team that kind of helps, when we were implementing, helped a little bit with that. And since we've been fully rolled out, I'm on the team that helps just educate people about not only what Holacracy is, but what self-management, self-organization are. And everyone on the team, we do a bunch of kind of different stuff, because obviously the concept of self-management is a very broad thing. We all do different stuff. Myself specifically, all of my focus is on the initial training. So I work a lot in our new hire training team to help give people their very first introduction of what this is and how it works and things like that. We're starting to do more work with like recruiting and that side of things, so hopefully people, before they even walk in the door, actually know what all of this is. So that's kind of what I do. Good. So I'll go over this, kind of tell you about our journey, struggles, challenges, kind of our approach to it and the way we describe a lot of this stuff, hopefully in the most simple terms possible, and hopefully a lot of time for a Q&A at the end. But if you have any questions at any point, feel free to yell. Yeah. All right. So these are kind of some of the main dates. So January 1st, 2014 is when we officially actually rolled out Holacracy. About 6 months or so before that, we did do a pilot group with just a couple little areas, mostly like HR, just to see kind of how they felt about it, how it worked, stuff like that. We actually began officially rolling out on January 1st. On March 24th of 2015, this is when an email was sent out that a good chunk of you have probably heard about. We call it the Rip the Band-Aid Off email, but essentially this email officially announced that we were moving toward a teal organization. And for anyone that doesn't know what that is, the book Reinventing Organizations talks about different types of companies, essentially color codes them. And a teal organization is a fully self-managed, fully self-organized company. So we sent out an email that essentially said, we're moving toward this. Everything we do on this from this point out is to really try to accomplish this for ourselves. It's a really big thing. And as of September 11th, 2015, that is when we finally finished rolling out the very last circle or team within Holacracy. Because obviously we're a very big company, 1,500 people, a lot of teams, and we kind of did it one by one to really get them trained in what is this and getting them the new structure. So it did take quite a while, but we've been rolled out for a while now using Holacracy. Good. Questions on the timeline? All right. So, like I said, talked about this a little bit, but in the book Reinventing Organizations, it classifies Zappos as a green organization, where it focuses a lot more on people and there is kind of a higher purpose and things like that. But still, in some other areas, still has the same traditional hierarchy. And a teal organization is one that's completely self-organized, self-managed, and there's three pieces to what makes a teal organization according to the book Reinventing Organizations. The first one is wholeness. And this is essentially every single employee is the same person at work as they are at home. You don't have to be a completely separate person and change what you do, what you like, and what you talk about. You can, for the most part, be that exact same person. Also, the second piece is all teal organizations have an evolutionary purpose. So it's not just you want to be the biggest, most profitable company out there. You try to make profit to do something better. You want to help the community, you want to improve the world, you want to make people's lives better. There's a bigger purpose there, and getting money to be able to do that is kind of just an added bonus. And the last piece, which is where Holacracy comes in, is teal organizations are fully self-managed and self-organized, and this is mostly what we'll be talking about now. Good? All right. So, a lot of the questions that we get are, why did Zappos want to move toward this new system when we were already so successful? We were always on the Forbes list. We were doing a lot of great things. Why this massive transition? So we found out that as companies increase in size, a lot of things go down. There's a lot less innovation, there's a lot less problem solving, and there's a lot less employee personal growth, which overall means less employee happiness. If you can't really grow and be what you, do the things you want to do, and you can't innovate, can't problem solve, you're probably going to be a lot less happy. And this becomes pretty common as companies get bigger and bigger and bigger. There's also a ton of bureaucracy. Certain people kind of have to approve every single little thing, there's a lot of politics, all kinds of issues with that. And coincidentally, when we sent out that email that said we're moving toward this teal system, kind of switching it up, Zappos was about 15 years old. And most large profitable companies have an average lifespan of 15 years. So it's kind of a good sign that we may want to try to change up the way we do things so we can actually live and thrive beyond this. So we moved for several different reasons. Because when it comes to success, starting much smaller and brand new, obviously, you do see a lot of these opposite things. So there is a lot more innovation. Everyone's just making stuff up, figuring out where to take this new thing. A lot more problem solving, and even in Zappos' past, when we were first starting out, we see a lot of examples of this sort of stuff. Personal growth, because usually everybody kind of has to do a little bit of everything. Everybody has to pitch in. And ultimately, employee happiness. Every single person is really bought into this idea. Every single person feels like they're helping this thing to grow and thrive and prosper. So we essentially wanted to figure out how do we make our massive, already built 1,500 person company feel like a startup. Also, because instead of a bureaucracy, when it comes to bureaucracy, there's usually only a few people making decisions. Even at a great pace like Zappos, at the end of the day, it was pretty much the same 15 people that actually had the ability to make decisions and changes throughout the company. So not that many. Whereas in self-management, self-organization, for the most part, every single person can contribute to what this should look like. Restructuring our organization, figuring out where we can add value, stuff like that. The internet is actually a really good example of this, and you can find a TED Talk video about this. But essentially, with the internet, it's completely self-organized. Anyone can hop on, make whatever content they want to of any kind. Which, yes, does mean there's a lot of bad stuff on the internet, but that's also what has made it so hugely popular, so that's ingrained in everything. Whereas if only 15 people could decide what actually went onto the internet, we probably would have gone obsolete. Alright. So, heard that you guys really wanted to know what some of our initial struggles were when we went through Holacracy, so we tried to take some of those down. One was that Holacracy was introduced as an abstract, foreign, crazy concept. We were like, hey, you've never self-managed or self-organized before. So few people are doing this. This is going to be new. It's going to take a lot of learning. It's going to be really crazy. So if you introduce anything like that, it's going to make it very difficult for anyone to learn it because we immediately look at it and think, I have no idea what's going on. And so that was one of our really big struggles, is just the mere idea of what is this kind of blows everyone. Another piece was that, for the most part, Holacracy was mandatory in its entirety. There wasn't really like an option or something, which in Holacracy wouldn't really make sense. It has to be, or in any self-organized thing, the whole company has to be bought into whatever system you use. But ultimately we said, hey, we're using this new system. All of your meetings have to be done this way. Every single thing you say has to be using these words now. And so that kind of threw a lot of people off, because we were like, here's this thing you have to use, regardless of whether or not you actually think it's good or what you know about it. Another one is we enforce the rules without actually knowing why. This is something that we've recently learned a lot about, and I'll dig into more about what we're doing and the difference of all these. But it's one of those things where now we almost kind of joke about it in terms of how strictly we enforce every little rule. So for example, there's one process within a lot of pieces of Holacracy called sacred space. It's essentially your time to be able to talk, so nobody can interrupt you and talk over you and things of the sort. It's a very important piece of it. But even if somebody was like in their sacred space, they'd say, oh, it's my birthday today. And if somebody else would say, oh, happy birthday, we were so ingrained in the system that we'd be like, no crosstalk, it's not your time right now. And so, really kind of crazy. Thinking just like with the laws, if everything was enforced exactly as they are, it'd be a little too much. Like a stop sign, you're supposed to stop 5 yards ahead, slowly creep up to the stop sign, stop again, and then you can go. But if you got pulled over for just stopping, you'd be like, oh, this is insane, what's going on? So that was a little too strict. Another piece was that we tried to reinvent the wheel all across Zappos. So like I said, Zappos was very successful and doing great well before Holacracy. We had a lot of systems and processes and procedures in place that worked just fine for us. But as soon as Holacracy was mentioned, we were like, all right, well, we have this crazy new tool that we can do all kinds of stuff with. Let's change everything we're doing. Let's get rid of all that stuff we had before and find a new way to do it. Not really thinking, oh, if it worked before, we don't necessarily need to create a brand new. Another piece was that change in Holacracy is very easy for the most part. To the point that it was almost detrimental to us, because anybody could potentially change anything. And so it came down to the point where essentially, if you had a kind of good idea, you would just make it a company-wide requirement at the snap of a finger, without really thinking like, yeah, should I maybe take some more steps? One of the really, really big ones, which I think by far is one of the biggest challenges for almost anybody using, almost any company using Holacracy, is that because change is very easy and because it gives you this power to solve virtually any problem, we were using Holacracy instead of having conversations. So if you weren't getting your work done for whatever reason, instead of just talking to you and having that conversation, I would just go up to like an entire department and put some new rule in place that restricted a lot of people just because of the one thing you did, instead of actually having that conversation with you or holding one person accountable. Another one that fortunately took us a long time to really comprehend is Holacracy is a lot easier for some people than it is for others. So when it comes to self-managing stuff like that in general, same sort of thing applies, but especially in Holacracy. It's a complicated set of rules and processes and procedures, and if anyone can change anything, but there's steps and processes on how you do that. You have to come to a meeting, you have to present your idea, you have to be able to back it up and defend it, and there's a lot of steps and processes in there. Fortunately, what we see is usually it's the people that used to be our managers and stuff that already have the skill sets needed to do public speaking, to be able to defend and present an idea, to talk about how different strategies affect different things. And there's a lot of people who don't have any of these skills, and so they have a very hard time getting into Holacracy. But when we first rolled out, we didn't really stop to consider that. We were like, everybody has equal power. If you have a problem, just go fix it. And if anybody wasn't doing it, we just thought, they're like, well, they don't want to, forget about it. And so we really didn't stop to think about all the skills needed to do this stuff. It's a lot easier for some people than it is for others. Another one is we only talked about the ideal state of things, which I think is natural in most situations. We got this new thing and we were like, this is going to change your life. It's amazing. Anyone can solve any problem. We're all on an equal playing field. There's not going to be any politics or bureaucracy or all this stuff. Here's what it can be. And ultimately, yes, it could be that way in the future, and we're hoping we get there, of if everyone's using this perfectly and working together, that all can be true. But unfortunately, anytime any sort of problem came up or there were any issues, we would just talk about it, well, hey, everyone has the same power, it's super easy to go solve any problem, just go ahead and go with it. But obviously that's easier said than done, which ultimately just kind of turns people off of it. And last one, there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings, which is largely kind of what our team does now, is trying to clear up a lot of that stuff that was done from when we first rolled out Holacracy and how it was initially trained and things like that, really getting people to understand, that's what we said, but it was taken out of context. Here's how this actually should work, and here's what these things actually should. So I'll dig into what all these things mean in just a moment. But essentially, after going through all these struggles, we had to learn that our customers should come first. Holacracy is not just, I shouldn't be teaching you the way that I want you to use it. I shouldn't be telling you what you need to say and how you need to use it. I'm here because I'm a support tool for you. If you aren't getting value out of something, I should be doing what I can to help you find that value. And so one of our big transitions lately just came from realizing that we shouldn't be trying to force everyone to use it the way that we think they should use it. We should be figuring out how they want to use it and how it can benefit them and helping them get that. So going back to this, here's kind of what we're doing differently on each of these points to help tackle a lot of these issues. So for the first one, and this is kind of one of the main things that blows people's minds now, because for years, they've been thinking this process is crazy complicated. It's totally not. We teach people now, especially even a new hire coming right in the door, every single person knows how to self-manage. Every single person does it every single day. In terms of work, yeah, it's a fairly new concept because most places don't do this, but it's really nothing new. Does anybody tell you how to dress? Or who you have to marry, what kind of car you have to drive? Probably not. You self-manage, you do all that yourself. You get your bills paid, you have groceries, you probably feed your kids when they need to be fed. Like, you self-manage all the time. You also self-organize all the time. Slightly different thing, for the most part it's the same. You work ultimately where you want to work, you shop where you want to shop, you play games, whatever types of games you want to play. This is all stuff we do all the time. So it's not having to learn any crazy new system, it's really just learning that what you do at home, implementing that and doing the exact same thing at work. So another one is, instead of saying everything about Holacracy, you have to use 100% of it all the time, don't care what you say, now we approach it from a very different aspect. Holacracy is just a support tool here for you, and we will show you what it can do, and if you think that will benefit you, take those pieces of it, we'll show you how to use it, and we can do that. So for example, when it comes to different types of meetings, Holacracy has a couple different meeting types built in, a lot of checks and balances and processes within, to make sure things get done, to make sure people aren't talked over and interrupted, a lot of important stuff there. But ultimately, we're forcing everyone to use these meetings exactly by the book, even when they didn't need it. So a good example is our tech department. They already use Scrum and Agile and a lot of other processes, so they were like, this doesn't actually accomplish anything for us, it's just hugely overcomplicating what we already do. And so now we're like, that's fine, you don't ever have to have these types of meetings, you know what these things are for you. But other people, we show them a regular meeting, and they're like, yep, I don't like that, I need some structure. We show them this new process, instead of forcing them to use it, they say, wow, that's actually really helpful, I want some of that. And so we approach it from a very different standpoint. So enforcing the rules with that, yes?
Can you give some examples of where you enforce the process and we're just going just very concrete?
Yeah, so I mean, one example, like I just said, was the tech situation. We would say, hey, you have to have a tactical meeting. You have to do it. Like, all your meetings have to be tactical now, even if you don't want to have to meet that often because you sit by everybody in you, or because you have different types of meetings already, different things like that. Okay. If you have any other questions, let me know. So another example is enforcing rules without the why. Like I said, there were some examples where people would just needlessly cut people off because they were technically interrupting through the process, even if it caused no harm whatsoever. It would be your sacred space, your time to say whatever's on your mind and just kind of get everything off your chest. And if you said it was your birthday and somebody else said, oh, happy birthday, we would cut them off and interrupt them and be like, no, you can't do that. Or you would be like, hey, I have an idea, I'm gonna talk to people beforehand and see, like, should we do this or should we not? And we would say, no, you're not allowed to do that. That would be building consensus, and you don't want to do that in Holacracy, so don't do that. So there'd be a lot of little best practices and rules and processes that in like a 100% holacratic system, the way it was taught to us, we thought that was right. And we quickly learned, like, that's not necessarily the best way to go about it.
Have you spoken to the several companies before you implemented it, or were you implemented from a very purist?
It was largely purely theoretical, and what the company that made Holacracy, they're called Holacracy One, how they taught it to us.
Okay.
Yeah. And unfortunately, at the time, there weren't too many resources for us to be able to reach out to and figure things out, because Holacracy didn't start getting really big until Zappos took it on. And we also had a lot of struggles and challenges that nobody else could really help with, because most other companies that use Holacracy were like 30 people. And so, being 1,500 people, we have encountered countless situations that, honestly, in Holacracy, they never even planned for. And a lot of the changes have been because of what we've done. And so there's been a lot of times where, even when we reached out for help, the answer we got was basically theoretical of like, well, I guess this would be the best way. So that was a lot of our stuff. When it comes to reinventing the wheel, like I said, we already had good stuff, and then we tried to switch everything up in Holacracy. Now we're trying to go back to reminding people that there was a lot of stuff we did great beforehand. We don't have to change everything just because we're using this new system. Tech teams, again, if you already have something that works great for you, that's fine. You don't have to completely switch things up. You have different policies and processes and ways we scheduled and like CLT and all across the company that we completely switched up, caused all kinds of issues. And now we're saying, hey, let's just kind of, it's fine to just go back and do things the way we did because it worked fine, and now we can just use this new tool to slowly improve that. When it comes to change being too easy, we focus a lot more on actually communicating with people, especially beforehand if there's going to be massive changes. So if you're going to present a company-wide change, which anyone can do, we really try to get people to be like, talk to everybody that's actually going to be affected, that has a lot of insight and knowledge on this thing, so that it doesn't seem like a blind side, so that you're prepared going in there. You actually have some information on what will work, what will not, stuff of the sort. When it comes to Holacracy being used to avoid conversations, same sort of thing. We always promote talking to people first, and we also talk a lot about have those difficult conversations, use conflict resolution processes, which we have a lot of stuff for, focus on our people and our culture. Even though my job is teaching people how to use Holacracy, myself and everyone on our team says never use Holacracy until you've at least talked to people first. Talk to people as much as you can, and if that's not working, then use Holacracy.
Can I ask there, how have you helped people to confront conflicts and challenge themselves really to have those difficult conversations? Because that's more than training.
Absolutely, very good question. A lot of it, the vast majority of it does come kind of from training in terms of we have a lot of conflict resolution processes that are taught during new hire training, and other teams can request it as a whole. We have mediation services, a lot of different things like that. And then a lot of it comes from building relationships and having other people there for them. So example, if you two had some sort of problem, it's easier said than done than just saying, oh, talk to each other. But if you guys hate each other, it's not going to be that easy. You will just not do it. And so usually for example, you may come to me and say like, how do we solve this problem? And now previously we would say, yeah, just talk to them, solve your problem, get it taken care of. And now I may say, hey, would you be comfortable if I set up a meeting with all three of us and I'll be there with you?
And you could be anyone in that model.
Yeah, correct. And so there are certain roles certain individuals who their job is mediating conversations, and they're like officially trained in a lot of other stuff like that. But ultimately, anyone that you trust, again, everything always goes back to our culture. If there's somebody that most people trust and that person will be neutral and just help to solve this problem, totally fine. So when it comes to Holacracy being easier for some people than others, one of the things we're doing a lot of now is better preparing people for this stuff. So a lot of it's like, instead of just saying, go to these meetings, process your tension, get problem solved, everything will be fine. Instead of just kind of shooing them out the door, we say, hey, you know what, we want to make sure you are 100% prepared. Meet with everybody that may have some information and insight beforehand, so that there's less surprise when you go into this meeting, less chance that they'll bring something up that you weren't expecting if you've had this conversation beforehand. Let me teach you exactly how the meetings work. I'll sit down with you and I'll go over every single step, show you how it works, why it's set up that way. You can come to some meetings of other circles so you see the process in action. And we even have a whole circle, a whole team that exists purely to run fake meetings with people when they have a really big idea that they want to present. And we will handpick certain people from around those departments that have a lot of valuable feedback and insight. So essentially that person goes through what would basically be a real meeting with feedback and input and everything of the sort, so they're fully prepared not only in the meeting process, but what kind of feedback they'll get.
Does it make sense to tease them in a way about the Holacracy idea, let's say, and then afterwards do the big bang, or is it more intention to launch it just when you start talking about it?
You mean
what you preach, or does it make sense to start a communication program 1 year in advance, let's say?
You mean say before like rolling out Holacracy?
Yeah, teasing them with all kinds of ideas and information, and move it towards a big bang day.
Yeah, I think that would honestly be better, because again, hindsight is 2020. We learned a lot from the way we rolled out, and I think that would ultimately be better. And we've had that approach with, like I said, the new hire training and stuff. We've been doing that a lot more and seeing so much more success. So previously when people would come to the Holacracy training, it would just be like, hey, here's how great this thing is, it's magical, just follow all these rules and your life will change forever. which is very difficult, throws a lot of people off, things of the sort. And now what we do in new hire training in a lot of different areas is we let them see where they think it's valuable. So for example, we used to just say, here's this new meeting type, it's amazing, even if they clearly didn't feel that way, and it was so rigid and structured that they were just like, oh, this guy's clearly high or something. So now what we do is we pull up some volunteers, and we just say, here's some prompts, here's like some information you need to get, here's a problem you want to solve, here's a project you've been working on, get some updates on it, and we give each person different prompts. And we just say, you have 10 minutes, have a meeting. Freestyle, and then we just sit back and we don't do anything. And they just have a meeting like most people would. You go into a room, whoever talks the loudest or the most usually kind of runs the meeting. A lot of people don't speak up. Nothing really gets done. Who's capturing the outputs that people say they're going to do, stuff like that. At the end of the 10 minutes, even if it starts out well, usually they're like, I don't really feel like anything's actually going to get done. There's stuff I didn't get to talk about. We were bouncing all over the place. It was not a great meeting, pretty standard. And then we say, all right, 5 new people, you have the same prompts. We're going to do the exact same thing. The only difference is we're going to have a facilitator here, who's one of the roles in Holacracy that helps run the meetings. And this one person runs the meeting Holacracy style, without ever using any of the Holacracy jargon and lingo that would confuse people. So it's essentially just somebody there to kind of help run things. By the end of it, everybody had their voice heard, every single problem was tackled, all the information we need was shared, and people will say, wow, that's actually really valuable. I like this system. And so we are letting them find the value in it. And so we say, oh, if you want to use this meeting format, you can, entirely up to you. And most of them now, because they can see side by side that clear value, will say, oh, I actually like what this can offer. I want to use that, instead of us forcing it on them. Because even if it is valuable, if it's forced on you, you're not going to actually see that. Did that answer your question? You have a question?
No, sure.
So, like I said, a lot of it was we only talked about the ideal state of things. If somebody had a problem, we would just say, everybody has equal power to go and change anything across the company. Go ahead and take care of it. You need to change something in the company, email Tony, ask for an invitation, propose something in front of our internal board. Super easy. Not realizing that not everybody is comfortable with that. It's a lot easier for some than others. So now, one of our biggest things, and one of the things we've actually found the most value in out of all of this, is being honest and upfront with people. We've had so many people thanking our team, like legitimately, and saying, thank you for actually being honest about this. When somebody brings up a struggle and something they're having a challenge with, maybe something about this process that doesn't work for them, instead of saying, nah, the fact that you don't think it works just means you don't know it well enough, just do A, B, C, and D. Now we say, hey, you know what? I totally get that. We have heard this problem, we know this struggle, it sucks what you're going through, etc., etc. Here's something you can do, here's some of your options, whatever you need. And so actually just being honest with people about the challenges and the struggles and that sort of stuff really helps people see that we're not salesmen, we're not just trying to want them to buy Holacracy. We are just here to help them and help them find value in this. And the last one, a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings. Like I said, it's really kind of just what I'm doing right here, clarifying what things really mean, how things are supposed to work, stuff like that. Questions on any of these? All right. So, this is also something that...
Yeah, sorry. When you talk about volunteers in the company, are those people, do they do this in their company time, or do they do this in their free time as a volunteer?
I'm not sure what you mean by volunteer.
Yeah, people who volunteer to help. Explaining.
Sorry, yeah, facilitating. Yeah, sorry about that. So in Holacracy, every single circle, which is basically your team, has a facilitator who, for the most part, during meetings, that is somebody that just runs the meeting. They know the basic processes and stuff, so they can keep things on track and make sure stuff is needed done. Yeah, it's on the company time, and anybody can do that job. So obviously some people have more training than others, so like myself and other people on our team, we facilitate for a lot of different circles, but any circle could just be like, will you facilitate this meeting? You could be like, yeah, that's fine, I got it, this round, this round, this round.
Is it a convention before
So everyone sits in only whatever meeting of the team that they're on. Every team is we call them circles, So there's the company circle, and then within that, it's broken down to like our internal circle, our external circle, that's broken down further and further. And so you sit in whatever meetings you're a part of. And most people are actually a part of several different circles. So I'm probably in like 20 different teams, some of which I do legitimate work in. Other ones I'm there solely to facilitate their meetings. I have no idea what work they're actually doing. I'm just helping go through that process. So anyone also can be invited to any meeting. So like I've been to the our company level a couple times with essentially our internal board and Tony and them. So when I saw this, this was one of the greatest things I've ever seen, because this is kind of our biggest focus now. Previously, whenever we would send out messages and things like that about this holacracy and self-management and self-organization concept, it's some big, elaborate thing. We have to do all kinds of research and stuff to really understand it. And really knowing that you can't actually inspire anyone to do anything if you can't explain what it is in like a sentence or two.
You can use the slides. As long as you use the name, use the slides.
I appreciate that. So what we do now is previously when we talk about self-management, we have to equate it to how does a city work and all these different bits and pieces and the infrastructure within, and we just blow people's minds. And now, whether it's self-organization or self-management, we've broken down the explanations to like a single sentence. So for example, when we talk about self-management, the way we explain that now is just knowing what your expectations are and doing whatever you think is best to meet those. Don't have to do a lot of research. Most people know what that means. If you know you have to be at work at 7 a.m., nobody's going to tell you when you have to wake up, when you have to have breakfast, when you need to get on the road because there may be traffic. We just trust you actually know how to do that, and you get here. Boom, you self-manage, you're pro. Go team. So that's really all that is. Yeah. So on that note, kind of some of the differences between how we did things then and how we do things now. When we talked about self-management and self-organization, previously, like I said, we kind of talked about it like a city. You can see a lot of posts on this, really dig into all the details and complexities of everything. And now, as I've probably mentioned a couple times already, we just talk about it as if it's real life. You know how to self-manage, you do it all the time. Don't worry about a city, you know how to get groceries. There's a lot of decision making in that. If they're out of something, you know how to figure out that struggle. You know to think about like, well, I don't want to get groceries, but my children need to eat, so I have to. When do I do this? Everyone's already a pro at self-managing, self-organizing. We're just not used to doing it. Another example is really explaining the rules of holacracy themselves in a much more simple way, which was a lot more difficult. If you've ever looked into like the details of holacracy, there's a whole constitution as to how it works, a lot of complexities, a bunch of legal jargon on every single situation you could think of. There's rules in there to explain how you would actually go about handling that. So one example, a policy in holacracy is defined as a grant of authority that allows others to control or cause a material impact within a domain, or limits on how others may do so when otherwise authorized. And when we first rolled out holacracy, this is exactly how we were teaching people. We were like, this is a policy, here's what it is, here's how it works. Naturally, nobody had any idea what was going on, and was like, I want nothing to do with this. So now we say, oh, a policy, it's just like a law. And they're like, huh, no, that's not. And so essentially, just we can, what was that? So anything can change. So that's one of the things, yeah. It's true, it's true. So ultimately anything can change. The law is always going to be there unless somebody changes it. So changing laws in holacracy is a lot easier than changing laws in normal politics. But essentially we can do this with every single part of holacracy now, which really helps people understand what it is. We instead say, hey, like, here's, this policy basically acts like a law. You know how laws work. And they're like, yeah, I get it. And we're like, okay, great. Moving on. And they don't really have to have, normally when we try to describe policies, it was one of the most difficult things for us to explain, and we'd have to spend like half an hour to an hour just describing that. Now it takes us 15 seconds, nobody has any questions. And so really, simplicity helps tremendously when delivering what this is. We give them the simple format, and then we just say, okay, well, like laws here, we call them policies. Just so you know, when you hear that word, you know what we're talking about, and they'll be like, okay, I get it. And so we teach them what it is before we teach them the jargon and the lingo for that, which helps a lot. Good. So when it comes to Holacracy, it can do virtually anything. Almost any company can adapt Holacracy and use it in a way that works for them. The tool itself is built to be absurdly flexible and to apply to almost any situation. So it's very, very adaptive. So the way we describe it now is ultimately it's just a tool that is there to help you. But that tool offers three different things. One, it offers you meetings, like I've talked a little bit about. It has some meeting formats for accomplishing different things, whether it's getting work done or actually setting what the rules and people's job expectations are. There's processes and rules and guidelines and a lot of checks and balances for that stuff. So if you need more things done, if you want more balance in your meetings, if you want a better way of accomplishing things, Holacracy offers that. If you have no value in that, you already have great meetings, you have no issues, you don't need this part of the tool. Forget it even exists, you do you. Another one is that it offers documentation. If you've ever heard of GlassFrog, this is the tool that Holacracy 1 built. But ultimately, in Holacracy, you can use any tool you want to. But essentially, Holacracy offers, through GlassFrog, a way for everyone to document everything so that there's full transparency and provides a lot of clarity on what things are. So I can log into this tool and tell you exactly what job every single person in my organization does, what their expectations are and what I can hold them accountable to, and what rules I have to follow, as does everyone else. So instead of your old system of essentially everything was in your manager's head and what they told you, now anyone can see, I can see what authority you actually have, what you are and are not allowed to do, because everything is completely explicit in this tool. So if our team has zero issues with things being explicit, we just chat and figure everything out, again, we may not have a need for this. If there's any issues with that, I'm like, hey, I think your job is supposed to be ABC and you don't agree, let's clearly document that so now there's no misunderstanding. And the third part is that it's a rule book to make changes. A lot of times, especially if you read media and stuff, you'll see like, oh, in this new system, anyone can do anything. It's complete chaos. Zappos is on fire. Clearly, that's not the case. Holacracy, the Constitution, is essentially just a rule book. It says, here's what authority you have, here's what you are and are not allowed to do, here's how you make changes, here's how you change those laws we talked about and people's job expectations, here's all the steps you have to follow. So that it lets everybody speak the same language, so that previously, if I wanted to go to tech or merch or content and try to make some changes for some reason, all of them would do things in very, very different ways, it would be really confusing, and ultimately they may not agree with what I'm doing. Now there's a language that we are all speaking, and if anyone needs to make a change anywhere in the company, everybody knows exactly how that's done. So there's a lot of checks and balances there. So even when I say potentially anyone can change anything, it's not as chaotic as it sounds. There's all kinds of checks and balances there to make sure crazy stuff doesn't happen. Good? Alright. So, self-managing, bless you. Again, previously a super complicated thing. We broke it down to 4 steps. From circle members' perspective, and the lead link. In Holacracy, every team has a lead link. For better or worse, just think of it like a manager. Overall, same sort of situation. So, what each of those people has to do in order for everyone to effectively self-manage. From a circle member's perspective, you have to understand your expectations, and for your manager, they have to set clear expectations. So one of the examples we use, going back to our new hire training starts at 7 a.m. every single day. Very first day, they say, hey, you have to be here at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Everybody get that? Yep, everybody knows what that means? Fabulous. They have set crystal clear expectations. Everybody understands expectations. What do you think would happen if our trainer said, hey everyone, be here in the morning? And nobody would get here on time. The trainers wouldn't know when to actually start class because everybody's showing up at a different time. You think morning is 4. I think morning is at 11:45. It would be all over the board. It would just be crazy. So setting very clear expectations and making sure both people know exactly what that is hugely important. The next one is circle members should do what they think is best to meet expectations, and the managers should just trust them. This doesn't mean just blindly trust everybody, but ultimately, if you set very clear expectations, you said, hey, we know what 7 a.m. means. We totally agreed on this. We know we're on the same page. And I think you have the skills necessary to do this job, and I think you'd be great for this. I have reason not to trust you. And so I don't need to be calling you, telling you when to wake up, when to hit the road, what kind of clothes to wear. But we set clear expectations, and you're the right person for the job, so I should just trust that you're going to do that. Next is communicate, and the manager should be available to help. This was a big issue for us because when we first rolled out, again, a lot of mixed messaging with what self-management actually was, and kind of the way we message it and the way it was taken is a lot of people are like, oh, self-management means I manage for myself, by myself. I don't need to actually talk to anybody. I am on my own island, which most businesses don't actually work that way, so things didn't get done too well. And so really emphasizing that if you need anything at all, if you need more training, if you don't have enough money to be able to do what you need to do, if you need anything at all, or if you don't understand your expectations, you need to actually speak up and let people know. And for the leaders, for a little while, we said, we don't actually need managers anymore. We're using this new system. A lot of our managers, even the really, really good ones, were being way too hands-on. You're self-managed, I don't want to step on your toes, which unfortunately, again, caused a lot of problems. All of our natural leaders and the people with the skills and experiences weren't there sharing that. And so being available to help whenever somebody speaks up and says they need something, kind of necessary. And the last one, seems obvious, but definitely a big struggle, is knowing that you need to meet your expectations. Self-management isn't just you kind of decide what you want to do and then do whatever. Expectations are set, and you need to make sure you're actually meeting those. And your manager should be coaching people who are not meeting expectations and taking them out of that job by finding a replacement as.
How are lead links appointed?
The lead link above them puts them into the roles. So in the same way, in the exact same way for the circle member, anybody filling that job, their lead link puts them into the role. Same thing up the chain. The lead link puts the lead link below them into the role.
Very hierarchical.
So yes, actually, one of the huge misconceptions is that in Holacracy or self-management, there's no hierarchy. Holacracy specifically, that's completely false. If you look at it, it's one big circle with smaller circles in it, smaller circles in that, so on and so forth. It's by definition a hierarchy. The difference is that it's not a hierarchy of people, but a hierarchy of work. So previously, your CEO could do whatever he wanted anywhere across the company because he was your CEO, the director of anything, of any department, made all the calls, and everything you did had to be approved up the chain and then back down the chain. And those people, regardless of what they were doing, had that certain power. With the way it's set up now, there's a lot of checks and balances. So like, even though I'm just here teaching you about Holacracy, if Tony himself came into this room and were like, Paul, I don't like the way you're teaching this, change it up, I can say, no, you have no authority to do that. I have 100% calling the shots with what I'm presenting. So that's a huge difference. The second difference is that it's not about the people, but who has that role. So if say tomorrow somebody else, you were to become this job that I'm in of presenting the stuff, and I were to leave this job, even though I've had a lot more experience than you, I know the stuff way better than you, you now have 100% of the decision making with this, and I can't say a word about it, or I can't actually do anything about it. So it's about the jobs that we hold, and not just who we are and how long.
Do circle members participate in the appointment of lead links?
No, they do not. And there's a reason for that. It makes sense. It would be very complicated for me to get into. But essentially it comes down to being treated the same way of anyone, any lead link just puts who they want in that job, who they think would be best for it. And ultimately up the chain, it's the same system. So
how do you reconcile that with the hiring policy and what Java told us about earlier? If your team members are involved in inviting somebody else into your family as part of that recruitment process, why is that not the same when it comes to circles or teams?
Yeah, so ultimately that is something that we could do. Holacracy itself doesn't really define recruiting or any of that stuff. It's up for everyone to really use this tool to change how they want to do it. So a circle absolutely could say, hey, let's not put anyone into the circle until we all agree on it. You can 100% do that very easily. But by default, just the default system, they have it set up where ultimately somebody has to be responsible for putting somebody in a job. And so a lead link holds a lot of the default stuff that every team has to have itself in. Like who has a job and budget allocation and different things like that. By default, it's all built in there, but there's nothing you can't change.
What happens if it's the wrong person?
As in like if it's not somebody who's actually good for that.
Yeah.
Again, limitless checks and balances within Holacracy, a lot of ways to solve it. So the default is, like you said, you have to have clear expectations and making sure you're meeting those. So if your expectation is showing up at 7 a.m. and you are consistently not doing that, the lead link has the ability to coach you on that, provide feedback, hopefully help you out. But if you continue doing it, they can just kick you out of that role because you are not meeting that.
You were talking
What
about
if the lead link
lead
is
links.
one person?
You were talking about the
So
lead links.
same
Yeah, the lead link,
so,
yeah.
So say we have.
I have an example of a company where the group doesn't accept the lead link.
Yep.
What happens then?
So a couple different options. One, the lead link above any lead link holds them to the exact same standards as their own circle member. So if you were the circle member and you were her lead link, if you were not coaching people, removing them from roles, you weren't doing your lead link duties, or there were just some huge problems there, you could just go to her lead link one higher up the chain, which may be me, and say she's not doing her job. Now she, and as far as I'm concerned, she is the circle member and I am the lead link. So I need to set clear expectations for her, and I need to coach her if she's not meeting. And another option, don't see it as often, but again, in Holacracy, you can basically change anything. Some things we've tried here and there is some circles have put in policies, some laws, that essentially say we're going to vote on who our lead link is, or our lead link is going to change every 6 months, or again, anything at all you can basically change to figure out what works best for you and your team.
At the beginning of your presentation, you said that Zappos is like a green company, the human aspect. When I hear your story, it looks like you want to put blue in it, structure, etc. How do you experience that? Do you feel that the same by doing it and practicing it?
Yeah, so I think where a lot of the miscommunication comes from is a lot of people, and the way self-management stuff is presented a lot of times is it's very little structure, a lot more freedom, things of the sort. And again, going back to the real life example, all of you in here probably feel like you are totally self-managed in your normal lives. You have total freedom to live however you want, right? Now think about how many laws are actually in place around society around you. So same sort of thing here. If we just had 100% freedom, it would be absolute complete chaos. So yeah, ideally there'd be a lot more freedom, but ultimately we have to have structure to be able to have people operate efficiently within that system. So hopefully a lot less rules, instead of telling you when you have to wake up and when you have to be here and when you have to drive, all these different aspects, we're just going to say, be here at 7. That's the one expectation we'll set, everything else you can figure out.
And was it too free in the green situation before you started this?
Before we started Holacracy, no, there was, ultimately, there was a lot of freedom. Things were working really great. We were doing just fine. I was in CLT before I came here, and it was great. I could do my work, but I could also go to classes if I wanted to learn something. I could experience a little bit of different things elsewhere. So we still had a lot of freedom. I'd say overall, potentially a lot less than we do now in the grand scheme of things, because I can virtually work wherever I want to. I can change rules and processes if they're not working for me. So we did have a lot of freedom before. Going back to that point of things were working pretty well before.
And did people leave because of the new way of work?
Honestly, no. So I'm sure you've all heard about the offer and a lot of people leaving. Only 2 to 4% of the people that left had anything to do with Holacracy. For the majority of people, it was just really good timing and a really good offer that couldn't be passed up. We were essentially saying, we'll pay you a lot of money to start your own businesses and pursue your dreams and go on vacation. And so a lot of people were like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. But out of everyone that did it, only 2 to 4% actually mentioned Holacracy as a reason for why they're leaving.
If you're not familiar, there was a company-wide offer. I think somebody brought up something with new hire training offer, which somebody in NHT will talk about. Well, what, 2013?
Yes, March, it was on the beginning. It was March 23rd, 2015, I think.
About 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half. All the years mentioned here, but because we saw that it was some of the companies half in, half out. Some departments were doing Holacracy, some weren't. It was the Band-Aid approach that, all right, we're doing this, and the offer was made to the entire company that if this is not for you, make that choice, and it was a very generous severance agreement that for every year that you were here would be 1 month of severance pay as well as 3 months of paid benefits. And so, like Paul had said, we did have some people choose to leave, but a lot of people didn't choose to leave because it was because of Holacracy. It was because it gave people the opportunity to really think about, I've been here for 10 years, 10 months of pay to be able to maybe pursue something else or do something, you know, it gave a lot of people the opportunity, some very open avenues to do things. And to say, if you took the agreement, after a year, you were rehireable if there was a position open for you. So there were a few people that were kind of like, this is a great opportunity for me to go back, or a holiday, travel, go back to the East Coast, yes. And I'm no longer in HR anymore, but I really don't know if there are some people that have come back since. I believe there are a couple. Yes. So there you go, right? They got to have a little bit of a vacation or whatever, pursue some dreams, and then come back. And fortunately, there was a position available for them.
So this last new hire class, the first one of the year, we actually had at least 3 different people who had previously taken the offer that had been here for years and years and years. One of them was like one of the highest supervisors in CLT. She took it. One of them was from merchandising. He's been here for 13 years, and he took it, and they have come back since then.
The offer was to employees because there was a sense that not everybody was buying into your approach.
Yes.
That was the original.
The hope was that, hey, we're going to be going through.
We're going to be that those people are not totally committed to this, and we're going to replace the people who are. But then you say,
That was the hope.
you also allowed people to take this offer, and then
It wasn't a choice, yeah, it was truly a choice.
restricted.
No.
So it went to everybody, and then, you know, how many did you have?
So far, I think about maybe 5 total since. Again, doesn't necessarily mean the position you originally had. It could be now in a different department. Maybe it's a step down. But some people were able to come back if they chose to, if there was a position that was in good standing.
So for example, the person that was a supervisor in CLT for years and years and years, she came back as a seasonal this year and was just on the phones, and now she's being hired base level in our CLT department. Jean?
Oh, okay, yes.
Jean?
I have another question. So, because we talked about hierarchy, and I understand, I've understood before, that's why I asked the question, that Holacracy is very hierarchical, it's just making sense.
Yes.
And I'm interested in the term you just used, Java, a step down. So there's a clear sense of certain positions being higher than other positions, right?
Yes.
And which means you're getting back into the normal human emotion of power. And forget money, we did the tour, I understand that we're trying to weed out people who are purely motivated by money, but people do have an element of ego. We all have a little bit of ego, even if we try to be humble about it. I agree that's the most important value. How do you reconcile that with A, the holacratic system, and B, the values that you're talking about, as that power could drive people to play a game to get up the chain?
And that was probably definitely the wrong use of word, whatever this is. But it could be
criticism.
Yeah. No, it could be, maybe a certain position that paid obviously very differently because, if somebody had already moved into the position that they originally left, but they still want to be part of the company, we have some people that are willing to, whether it be into a seasonal position or, no longer moving into a supervisor position. But yes, absolutely no choice of word, but yes.
No, it wasn't meant to be a criticism.
That's
I'm saying it's normal human
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Yes,
Absolutely.
status is hugely important, and everyone's going to be doing that. One of the big things to really consider is, and that we really get people to try to understand in this new system, is the authority that each role has and the responsibilities of it. So there's always going to be those perceived like which jobs are above the rest. And some departments have a very clear progression plan. Like our merchandising team, for example, they've had this since well before Holacracy, and they just rebuilt it in this new system. But like you start out as a merchandising assistant, levels 1 through 3, then a buyer, level 1 through 3, and a senior buyer. They have built out, and each one has more responsibilities than the one before. It's like that's some system. Some other areas, like my team, for example, there's almost no progression. It's really just figuring out what you want to do. But knowing that even though some people can make decisions that affect a larger area, so it's still going to be completely different in terms of responsibilities.
And
Like,
just for the sake of time, because I believe we are at what